Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you today. My name is Lisa Unixt. I am an assistant professor of higher education at one of the State University of New York campuses, Empire State University. I'm going to share my screen with you and walk through in the next few minutes a few of the key features of U.S. higher education, which I hope will be helpful as you are considering options for yourself, for your networks, for your friends, for your community. And I'd like to note that I'd really be happy to talk with anyone who has questions about this at any time. So please do feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the Empire State University website. So let's launch right in to talking about a few of these key features of American higher education. So I'm providing here on this first slide just a bit of information about how many students are enrolled in American higher education and how many institutions, how many colleges and universities of different types exist in the US setting. So, this is based on national data from the 2017 to 2018 academic year. At that time, about 16 million students were enrolled in college or university full time. Most of those people, or about 14 million, were pursuing an undergraduate degree, and about 2 million pursuing a graduate degree. The majority pursued their degree at a public university or college, almost 70%. And you can see the breakdown in this chart of the number who pursued 2-year versus 4-year. Of course, in the US, we have not just public and private institutions, but private colleges and universities are also split between not for profit institutions that put their profits back into the college or university, and private for profit institutions that aim to make a profit, with that profit going to their shareholders, their CEO, etc. So these are the numbers. Now, I wanted to talk just briefly about a few other overarching trends in US higher education that might be important to be thinking about. I think that you may already know that English as a second language or English learning programs are available not just at community colleges in the United States, but also four-year institutions and sometimes not-for-profit organizations, right? Community organizations. And it's important to keep in mind that each of those different programs functions quite differently. Some of these programs might be relatively short in terms of how long they're meant to last. Some might last for a full semester or for a full year. Some may be without cost. Others will have a normal, meaning standard course cost, the same as other courses at the college or university attached to it. And similarly, some courses may provide credit, right, earned towards a degree, and others do not. And it's quite important to make sure that it's clear what you are looking for and also what the particular program offers. For example, making sure that if you do want to be earning credit, that you're pursuing a program that is allowing you to do that. It's also important to keep in mind that though we're talking about 2-year and 4-year institutions, community colleges being 2-year institutions and 4-year institutions offering bachelor's degrees and sometimes master's and doctoral degrees, that they're not always entirely separate in the sense that especially in the public sector, there are transfer pathways, meaning that colleges have already agreed on systems that will make it easy for students to move from a community college to a 4-year university, let's say, to earn their bachelor's degree. One example of this, and I'm listing the link for it here, is the Maryland Transfer Advantage Program, which is operated by the University of Maryland College Park and means that people who complete an associate's degree or 30 credits or more at any of the public community colleges in the state have an opportunity to take part in this transfer pathway program and finish their degree at the University of Maryland College Park. So, another key piece to keep in mind about these 2 and 4 year institutions is, of course, that the cost is quite different. Um, Cost is different. At the 2 year and the 4 year level, as you can see here. It's also different between the public sector and the private sector. But it's important to keep in mind that sometimes private institutions do have more scholarships or other types of financial aid available. So it's a good idea to consider both public and private institutions because we don't really know what sorts of aid might be available to us at private institutions. Generally, we have to apply before we find out what kind of scholarships or aid we might be able to receive. I wanted to note that just again, as an example, in Maryland itself, the tuition cost is a little bit different at different community colleges, public community colleges. A few examples are given here. So, for instance, Anne Arundel Community College charges about $4,910 as the in-district price versus Baltimore City Community College charging $3,314 as the in-district price. You can see on the left that in comparing 4 year institutions, one public and one private, we see a pretty big difference, right? In-state tuition for the year at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County would be a little over $12,000. For out-of-state students, it would be almost $30,000. And at a private university, this is a private Catholic university, Loyola University, Maryland, that rate would be $53,430 for all students, regardless where they live. But again, keeping in mind that private institutions often do have more scholarships and more financial aid available. So, to talk about a few other structures that might be helpful to keep in mind as we're thinking about these differences, right? Like, why are the costs so different? Why is the structure like this? Well, the US system of higher education, different than many other countries, is very decentralized, meaning that the 50 states hold primary control of higher education. So the state of Virginia, for example, is in charge of outlining how public universities and colleges in the state will operate, what tuition they will charge, etc. On the other hand, most colleges in the country are actually private. So we have quite a mix in this country. Yes, almost all colleges charge tuition here. There are a few exceptions. Military academies do not. Also, there are some work colleges, for example, Beloit College, which do not charge tuition. And without going into too much detail, fair to say that the 50 states have very different approaches to higher education, very different numbers of colleges and universities in the different states. So it's important to keep in mind that the landscape in Maryland does look very different than Virginia, which does look very different than West Virginia. Yeah, so again, to make the point that because we have private, for profit, not for profit, and public institutions, there really isn't a one size fits all type of college or university. As one example, the US hosts over 800 religiously affiliated colleges and universities that together enroll over 1 million students. And these include denominations such as those listed here: Greek Orthodox, United Church of Christ, etc. So, what are some of the challenges that we can identify in the US and specific to higher education funding? Well, it's very clear that state funding has declined for higher education over time. And in general, this means that tuition has risen, right? It also means that financial aid and scholarships have become more and more important, and institutions do have those available to provide. We also need to keep in mind that racial and ethnic identity, socioeconomic status, national origin, and other factors continue to play a role in who graduates from high schools in the US, who enters college, and who graduates from college in the US. This is one example of many from the California state system that shows in graphic form the number of students who identify as Asian American, African American, Latino, white, or other, these being government terms, who graduate from high school and then who pursue different types of college, right? And we can see that certain groups are overrepresented or underrepresented at different types of institutions. We might point to that African American students are not seen in representative numbers throughout the University of California system, which is the most expensive system in the California public structure and is the system that awards doctoral degrees. So it's really the research branch of public education. And just to make the point that I think you're already thinking about, how does the US compare in terms of cost to other countries? So this is a comparison of fees at the bachelor's level for public institutions in 2015 to 2016. And these, of course, are average figures looking across more economically developed contexts. And we can see that the US is right at the top in terms of cost, followed by Chile. And this is really a crisis. Higher education funding is a crisis in the United States, but important to place this in international context, I think, to grasp that fully. So I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Again, I'd really be eager to talk with you if you have any questions or comments, or if I can be helpful in identifying additional information. Thanks so much for your time. Take good care.